All right. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Collins Riggan, and I am a Master Naturalist trainee here with the New York Master Naturalist chapter. Tonight, I'm going to be sharing about North American ladybugs. I'm going to be sharing about the native species as well as the two most common non-native. So, really, the theme is the ladybugs that you do see in your backyard or most likely to see. So here's an agenda. It's kind of a loose roadmap for tonight. I want to start with the general information of the ladybug species. A lot of information on the different species of this insect is going to be duplicative or very similar. So I want to start with that information. So I'm going to walk through the general description, the taxonomy. I want to touch on a little bit of the anatomy, their habitat, and their diet. And then I want to start moving into a general overview of the North American native species, throw in a couple of the non-natives. One of those two is actually the most common that you see in the country right now. And then I want to bring it home with conservation efforts and then talk about a few things that we can do to play a role in hopefully seeing an uptick in their population. Just to keep with Christie's format, if we can just hold all questions to the end, I will definitely make sure there's enough time. I'm eager to see what questions are out there regarding ladybugs. So that'll just keep things moving. All right. So just some general information on ladybugs. And before actually I get started, I want to say, I have to say, because this is supposed to be a scientific group, they're actually not a bug. They are a beetle. The reason why, and you'll see it interchanged in the presentation, ladybug and lady beetle, is because we use both terms. I personally think ladybug sounds very endearing and cute, so I'm having a tough time moving away from that. But if we are being accurate here, lady beetle really is the correct name for them. So most ladybugs are going to have that iconic look of red and black spots. The two most common that look like that are the North American nine-spotted ladybug, Coccinella novemnotata, and then the European native, which is the seven-spotted ladybug. Those are going to really have that characteristic look, which you see here on the screen. Although they do actually come in a lot of different coloring combinations. They can be yellow, orange, gray, black, blue, and then they can have unique types of stripes and spots as well. So the taxonomy, the class of this insect is Insecta. The order is Coleoptera, and then the family is Coccinellidae. And Christy, I probably butchered that, but that was my attempt there. The common name, ladybug, ladybird, lady beetle. There's over 5,000 species worldwide. We've got a tremendous amount here in the United States. And I think most of us know they are heavily beneficial due to their pest control role. Typical lifespan of a ladybug is going to be 1 to 2 years. Some can push 3 in optimal conditions, but typically it's going to be 1 to 2. Their diet for adults is going to be primarily aphids and other plant-eating pests, and we'll get into a little bit more of their diet in the next slides. The larvae, they're going to also feed on aphids as well. They're both voracious feeders, so really great for the garden and to eliminate pests. Most ladybugs are going to have a dome shape to the body. Some are going to be a little bit more elongated than others. They're all going to have 6 legs, 2 antennae, and they can vary between 0.8 and 18 millimeters depending on the species. They've also got a few defense mechanisms, which is really neat. You know, most ladybugs are very docile in nature. And so we typically don't think of them as having defense mechanisms, but they do. The first are actually their wings, and that allows them to be mobile, to move, escape. The second is going to be the mandibles, which we'll get into on the anatomy slide. And the mandibles allow the beetle to pierce and take control and devour their prey. The third, though, is what I think is quite fascinating, and that's called reflex bleeding. That's captured here in the second image on the bottom of the slide. In the middle of their leg and their leg joints, when they are provoked or touched or they sense that something has taken them, to eat them, they emit this liquid. And if any of you have ever squished or picked up a ladybug, sometimes your finger or hand may smell very metallic, very sour. That's this liquid. That's a natural defense that they have called reflex bleeding. So here's just a little bit of general info on the life cycle. Nothing too crazy here, kind of a standard life cycle of an insect. Eggs are laid in clusters near aphid colonies, and that's to go back to what I said. As soon as they hatch, they're ready to eat. So that's why they are strategically placed near those colonies. The larvae are often long, dark, with orange spots. They go through 4 instars and are very heavy feeders in all 4 of those stages. Pupation occurs on leaves or stems, and the adults emerge ready to eat and reproduce. And with some species, there can be several generations per year, especially in the warmer climates. All right, so I'm not going to spend too much time on the anatomy. That's not the point in this talk tonight, but I did want to point out some of the really important things. So the ladybug does have 2 compound eyes that helps them see. They have their 2 antennae, and this is the mandible, which I was speaking about. So, you can think of them as almost mini mouth claws, to be not scientific about it. So these are what they use to pierce and to chew, or to bring in their prey, such as aphids, whiteflies, etc. And then over here, I just wanted to point out, so between the tibia and the coxal line here, this is where that excretion is going to come out. So that's that natural defense, that reflex bleeding that I was talking about. And then, of course, this is very common in a lot of beetles, the tarsal claw, but it's definitely used a lot with these little guys to have good traction, and to take control of wherever they're walking. All right, so getting into the habitat, which I know a lot of us being a master naturalist are really interested in here. So lady beetles are found worldwide except for Antarctica. They're highly adaptable for a variety of ecosystems. They do have some preferred habitats, though. They really like it where there's food sources. So again, an area that's supporting plant life, that's going to host those aphids and soft-body insects. These are the favorites as well. So within that, they've got 4 areas that we really predominantly see the ladybugs, and that's going to be first gardens and agricultural fields, specifically places that have wheat, corn, fruit trees, which typically will have high pest populations, at least certain times of the season they will. Grasslands and meadows, these are open and again supporting the aphid population. Forest and woodlands, especially along the edges where that sunlight is creating those floral lines of plants that are again going to host those predators or insects that they're going to eat. Shrubby and bushy areas, they really tend to like things like milkweed and goldenrod. And I would say some of these like crops we're talking about, corn, wheat, milkweed, goldenrod, when you're out in a field or a farm the next time, especially in July, August, September, really look at the stems and you'll sometimes see a specific plant, maybe it's sick or it's weak, and it's just being overtaken by aphids. And that's the type of stuff that they're really going after. And the aphids can be ironically, a bit of the same color as the eggs of the ladybug. So it can go between a yellow golden and a black. So just a little bit more on habitats. Spring and summer, they're actively feeding and reproducing in areas rich in aphids. In the winter, they're going to overwinter in places beneath bark, inside leaf litter or old logs that have fallen, cracks in rocks or buildings, and some species gather in large groups indoors for warmth, which we'll talk a little bit more about. All right, so diet and preying characteristics. So ladybugs are very predatory, both the larvae and adults, as I mentioned. So they primarily are going to eat on the aphids, but they really do like mealybugs as well. They like mites, scale insects, white flies, and insect eggs. And I will say some ladybugs do prefer either just one of these in this list, or it can be all of them. So it really does depend on which species you're talking about. So they use visual and chemical cues to help them seek out their food. They use their eyes to spot movement, and they rely on plant chemicals or honeydew to locate their prey. They're active foragers, and they're constantly moving through vegetation in search of food. They don't waste any time. Once they do spot their food, they either walk or fly immediately to it to consume it. As I mentioned, they use their mandibles to bite and pierce the soft body of their insects. And they chew and then suck out those nutrients from whatever it is that they're eating. And they can consume several aphids in a short period of time. Okay, so the larva can resemble tiny alligators. I think that's a very accurate description. And can consume hundreds of aphids before pupating. The larvae can crawl over plants, attacking prey they encounter. Again, just really going to that ferocious behavior, whether a young beetle or a fully grown. A single lady beetle can eat up to 50 aphids per day, which really makes them a great organic method for controlling some of these pests versus spraying. So now I want to get into the specific natives to this country. So the first is going to be the convergent lady beetle. This one is native to North America, and it is found all over the continent. It can survive in different types of habitats, but it primarily really likes to be in forests in different types of grasslands. It can lay 1,000 eggs over the span of a few months. And in some populations, the beetles may undergo diapause if there are limited food resources to delay reproduction, really trying to conserve that energy. So how you can identify it. This one is typically bright red or orange, and it's normally going to have 12 spots. The one feature, or actually really two features that make this one stand out are the two white lines behind its head. That's very characteristic of this species. And then if you notice, it's a little bit elongated in a bit of a spade shape. So it's not that typical kind of bubbly round dome. And that really does make this one stand out a bit. They're going to be 5 to 7 millimeters long. And here's a little bit of another picture. So they're going to be found in gardens, agricultural fields, urban green spaces. They really like dry environments compared to some other ones. So you'll often see them in Western US states, specifically California. They are one of the most widely used lady beetles in biological control, which I've got a little video to show later on this. They are mass reared in the insect growing harvesting industry. They are used for greenhouses, crop fields, and home gardens to eliminate pests. And this one specifically, the species, when they overwinter, they do seem to prefer mountain valleys and leaf litter. And then this is just a last photo of it because I thought the shape, they did such a good job capturing that here. So when you are outside, if you ever do see one in this shape where it kind of looks like someone took what you would maybe think of as a standard ladybug and they stretched it, it's most likely the convergent lady beetle. All right, so the next one, again, we have another native species here. This is the pink spotted lady beetle. Generally, it's oblong, flattened, averages about 6 millimeters. It's typically pink. It can be red, but typically it is pink. It's got 6 spots on it, 6 spots, sorry, on each. So it's a total of 12. And variations can exist, but generally the colors and the spots you can take, not 100%, but they normally are pretty good markers, especially when you're out in the wild. Their preferred habitats, this one, agricultural fields, specifically they like the corn, wheat, and soybean, meadows and wildflower areas, gardens and roadside vegetation. And this species is highly adaptable, so it does make it very attractive for farmers in the ag industry to use to control pests. One more thing I did want to mention on this one, because there's a couple that like this. So most ladybugs are obviously eating the smaller guys, but this one will also supplement on pollen as part of its normal diet, and it will increase that pollen when prey is scarce. So I think that's quite interesting. I didn't realize until recently that that there was a little bit of a pollinator action going on with these guys. And then here's a picture of a pink ladybug, and it's laying its eggs right here. So these are used to control three specific things, or sorry, a couple things: cornleaf aphid and European corn burr eggs. It is researched significantly due to its adaptability and environment stressors. So again, it's really used in the farming and ag industry quite a bit. This one likes to overwinter in leaf litter as well as field margins. So now we're getting into one that you've probably definitely seen. This is the seven-spotted ladybug. This one is native to Europe, parts of Northern Africa, and Eastern Asia as well. It was introduced into North America and can be found in many regions with a temperate climate. It was introduced between the 1950s and 70s, and this was originally done as a biological control method. Just like a lot of things that we did during this time period or even before, we didn't necessarily know the lasting effects. So that's when they were first brought over. You can find them pretty much anywhere, the rest of them, right? Crop fields, meadows, gardens, and forest edges as well. So these are going to be bright red, and they can also be orange. Their characteristic is the 7 black spots, 3 on each wing, and then 1 in the center. And this one is going to be one of the larger sized ladybugs. So this one's going to, on average, be 7 to 10 millimeters. And just like the rest, it's going to have the alligator-shaped larvae. Still widely used for biological controls. And it has become invasive. So although you will still see it for sale, and we're going to talk about this a bit later, it has contributed to the decline of Coccinella novemnotata. There's other reasons as well, like sprays and chemicals, but this one definitely has pushed out the native species quite a bit. And this one is a little bit more aggressive. There's intraguild predation, so that means it will eat other ladybug species' eggs, as well as the young. And another species we're going to talk about in a minute actually will eat the adults as well. All right, so this is kind of the star of the show. This is our very docile 9-spotted ladybug. This is the one that's gotten all of the attention because of the decline in population. We really started noticing a decline in the 60s, and that really goes along with the theme of importing non-natives for a good reason, thinking we were, doing the right thing. But that's really caused some biological and ecological hurdles. This one, just like the rest, grasslands, meadows, agricultural fields, all the normal places it likes to dwell. This is a very stereotypical species with its coloring and its spots. It has 9 spots in total, 4 on each wing, and then you see the one here in the middle. They're going to be 5 to 7 millimeters in length. And they're normally going to have a very black head with these 2 outer white markings. So unlike many lady beetles that tolerate a wide range of habitats, the 9-spot actually prefers open, disturbed, or early successional areas. And those can be things like old fields, grassland margins, or weedy patches near agriculture. It largely started disappearing from much of its historical range in the 60s and 70s. The likely causes are going to be competition from the Asian lady beetle, the seven spot that we're talking about now, and change in agricultural practices, such as the increased use of pesticides. And then a little bit less, I'm actually interested in researching this a bit more, but it doesn't seem like habitat loss necessarily is the largest factor with this one, but it definitely has had, I would say it's aided the other two things in speeding up its decline. And something to note, so before, or mid 20th century, up until we were talking about 60s, 70s, this was really the predominant species that we saw across the country. There's some information that says 80% of lady beetles collected at this time were the 9-spot. So just really sad to see how there's been that change in ecology with them. So I want to hit on this one, the Asian lady beetle, Harmonia axyridis. So this one comes from East Asia, and it's native originally to China, Japan, Korea, and parts of Russia. It was introduced to North America, South America. Europe is a method of biological control, which is typically why non-native ladybugs are introduced. It is now considered very invasive. It spreads rapidly. Its growth habit is more rapid. It is able to fit into different habitats much better than others. It's just very adaptable and very aggressive. So you can typically spot this one. It's going to be red or orange. I feel like typically they seem to be more on the orange side. It's probably one of the most varied in terms of marking and color, so that can make it very difficult sometimes to identify, or at least with certainty, that you're looking at the Asian lady beetle. So it can have anywhere from 0 to 22 black spots. That's huge. So that can really, throw a monkey wrench when trying to identify it. The one thing though that, again, not a 100% rule, but the thing that can help you identify it the most is going to be the cream colored M or W on the back of its head. So that is the number one thing you can, that makes this one stand out if this is really kind of difficult to tell. So although they primarily feed on aphids like the rest, the Asian lady beetle also will feed on mealybugs, fungal spores, which is very different, insect eggs and larvae, including the other lady beetles, intraguild predation. And then this one actually can have cannibalistic tendencies as well, especially when there's not a lot of food around. So again, just really trying to drum that point that this one can survive. So good for them, but not necessarily great for the native species that operate differently and are more docile in nature. This one is very rapid in terms of development. So we kind of went through the top part, but in 15 to 30 days, these can develop. So just much quicker development time than the others, which are generally going to be a 30-day period. So I know a lot of us have probably seen these in the winter. Even right now, I'm seeing some ladybugs try to come in my house. But when the late fall comes and things are really cooling down and everyone's trying to figure out, how am I going to stay warm for the winter? The Asian lady beetle is the one that you see come inside to your house. So for those of you just seen, that massive influx and, they're drying up, around your windowsills, that is unfortunately not ever going to, well, it's most likely not going to be any native species because they do prefer to overwinter outside. The Asian lady beetle prefers to overwinter inside, often in man-made structures. So homes, buildings, walls, attics. There has been some biological, so in terms of ecological impact, they have done a good job at eating the aphids. The problem is that they are disrupting the native species. You will also see them often in vineyards, areas like that. And I do want to point out, they actually can, the Asian lady beetle, not the native species, can be an issue. They will often get in the wine, and just like I said, that excretion that's released, that will be in the wine, and it will turn it a very bitter taste. So they're basically a nuisance, is my point. They're originally brought over to help with the ag industry, and it's kind of a 50-50 on if they're helping versus being a nuisance now. So I just wanted to do a little bit of a comparison with what we've talked about between these two, because these are, I'd say, the forefront of everyone's interest, or at least, I guess, the science right now. You've got the one that's really taking over everywhere, and it's disrupting everyone. And then you've got the one that is almost was thought to be extinct and has been on the brink of that we're really trying to bring back. So you've got your number of spots, 0 to 22. Your native is going to have 9. The pattern, you're going to have that white M or W, which is really what's going to make it stand out for the Asian lady beetle. And the 9 spotted, you're going to have those 2 white spots. Color, orange to red. Typically, our native is going to be a red or a very deep orange. I also would say a deep red. Habitat and behavior can swarm. They can be invasive. And it's very not typical for the ladybug, but the Asian lady beetle actually will bite humans. Now, you don't need to worry. It's not anything that's going to leave a whelp. You're probably not going to feel it, but it can be slightly itchy. And it's just, I wanted to share that because it just speaks to their behavior and their disposition. And then the native, that's going to be very peaceful, both to pretty much anything it's not trying to eat as well as humans, very docile. And then I want to just do a visual of this because it's really important to know, because often a lot of times people who don't know much about ladybugs will see the Asian lady beetle and encourage its growth or think that it's a good thing. So this will hopefully help you spot them. And it's definitely a difference here. So you see that black head, and then you see that white M or W. Same here. All right, and then I wanted to just get into some conservation efforts. So, honestly, I don't feel like a lot's being done to bring them back. It could be just, the difficulty of finding the information. But I'm not sure that, based off my research, I don't feel like it's necessarily getting the airtime that it deserves. So I'd like everyone to kind of think about that because that's really serious, and maybe that'll generate some ideas of how to maybe get the public really caring more about this. But I just want to read some of this. So in 1989, the 9 spot had become nearly extinct in the state of New York. In that same year, ironically, though, the 9 spot became New York's state insect. Well, that in itself spurred public interest in that species, and that led to understanding its decline, and so that led to programs and efforts like the Lost Ladybug Project, which is hosted or at least co-hosted by Cornell. By the early 2000s, entomologists feared that it was at least functionally extinct in the wild. However, a live specimen was rediscovered in Virginia, my home state, in 2026. And some good news followed. There were some more sightings in New York, and then after that, South Dakota, Oregon, and a few other places. And basically, what it told scientists and the public is that this species is not extinct, and we're also seeing it, in more than one area, but it seems to be pockets. So, lots still needs to be done to maybe understand why those specific areas, why they're able to survive there. still what's led to that decline? And then really the big question is there a further decline? Or a lot of literature is kind of tossing out a possibility right now. Has it stabilized? So has it dramatically decreased, but we're leveling off? We don't know, but those are the questions that are out there right now. The Lost Ladybug Project, it's a great citizen science initiative. Their big efforts with this is to raise awareness, like we're doing here, talking about it, restoring their habitat, and then studying species interactions, and most likely their interactions between the non-native species. And then, one thing that I want to kind of call out and say, through doing research, the question became to me, so what with this 9-spot? If it's pretty much eating similar things as the Asian lady beetle or the European 7-spot, what's the big deal? Why do we need to panic? Why do we need to, put out the effort to save it if really from an agricultural and at least on face value ecological standpoint, the others are doing the same thing? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First is not backed by science, but we know when we remove things, what happens, or when we put things there that we shouldn't, hence chemicals in, the 60s. So I think for me, I would say, apart from just liking it and that it is native here, I would hate for us to not put out the effort and awareness in bringing them back, and then a decade, 2, 3 decades down the line, we realize that they served a unique purpose, or they themselves were food for another animal or insect, and that's maybe not getting what it needs now. So I think just a swap out is not the right way to look at it. I think we don't necessarily know the implications until it's too late. And I'd really like with the ladybug to not go down that route that so many things have taken. And then lastly, through my research, I thought this was such a wow, such a great thing. So they've done recent molecular studies, and if you're wondering where, it's kind of an odd place, but they've been doing a lot of research on these and their genetics in Egypt. And what they have found is that with the thousands of species that exist of ladybugs, the 9-spot native here has the most unique and isolated, unshared DNA. So it's very specific. And that's interesting because, these beetles evolved and progressed from, generally a lot of the same DNA. But this species, when they compare, is extremely different. So one actual tangible reason that the argument can be made to keep these alive is just for that genetic diversity, which is very healthy. So that was I think a feather in this guy's cap as to why we should really care about it. So what can we do to help increase the population of the 9-spot? First is we can create a habitat or an environment in which they can thrive. So that's doing things like planting native wildflowers, flowering plants. We can eliminate non-native species through control methods. And what I mean by that is we can, when you see any non-natives in the house, suck them up with a vacuum cleaner. Don't re-release them. Definitely don't encourage that, because they're just going to push out, everything that's native here. Avoid spraying anything, even for the non-native. So we don't want to spray anything that's harmful, that's going to disrupt the biology of life. So really want to advocate that we don't spray. And then the last is going to be we can purchase native ladybugs to release. And I've done that. I'm on my 3rd year now of doing that. It's a lot of fun. Typically, you're going to find the convergent lady beetle. Unfortunately, I can't find the 9-spot for sale. Maybe someone is selling it, but I haven't seen it. But I would encourage all of you, especially those of you who really enjoy gardening of any capacity, whether it's flowers, veggies, and you don't have to like gardening, but those definitely who do, go to your garden center. A lot of garden centers typically will sell the native species, and they'll have things like praying mantis as well. And they're a great resource to, to buy a disc and to release. So here's me. This is me doing it actually a couple years ago, and I just wanted to play a video. So when you release them, you're supposed to do it at night, hence the headlight and the flashlight. And this is my some overgrown grass around my 4x4s for veggies. So this is in May, and I've released them. I let them slowly come out, and then I want to show once they've been out for a while. And if you're wondering, I did this, I think it was like 11 at night, and I was out there for probably 45 minutes. So I know my neighbors think I'm crazy. But this is what they're doing here. So when you release them, the first thing that these guys want is water. And one of the ways that they get water is by water droplets. So I thought it was really neat that as soon as they were released, they knew they were thirsty and they were seeking out that water source. So I just think stuff like that's incredible. They've been in this plastic container. I don't know where they were grown, whether, a lab or like a farming facility. And to just instinctively know where to find the water is just truly incredible. And then this is just some more video. This my mother released back in Virginia. And I just wanted to highlight where we were releasing them. This is near an elderberry plant. An elderberry and things like that will often host a lot of aphids and pests. So it's a great area to release them. This is actually post-release, and this is the next morning. So again, you can tell they've gone to those wet leaves because they wanted that water source, but they're actually still sleeping. They haven't woken up yet. And this is checking on them the morning after. So they're just waiting for things and aphids and little guys to start coming over so they can start nibbling away. And then just to show you how docile they are, I think we all know that, but just wanted to show a little video of that. And this is the convergent lady beetle. You can tell by that long figure. And then I wanted to list some references and resources for folks. So Cornell Cooperative Extension is a great one. I wanted to include the info for the Lost Ladybug Project. The National Park Service has a lot of good information on ladybugs, as well as the Mass Audubon Society. So, Christy, that was the presentation, and I'd like to open it up to Q&A to see what questions there are out there about ladybugs.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's see. We do have some questions. Well, Chris noted that he kills all the multicolored lady beetles he finds in his garden. Marianne asked, do lady beetles have any relationship to Japanese beetles?
That's an excellent question. I don't know. My first thought is no, but I'm actually not sure about that.
Okay. Jim asks or mentions that he bought a box of live ladybugs from a garden supply store, brought them home, scattered them around his garden near plants infested with aphids, but within 2 days, all the ladybugs were gone and the aphids remained. What happened? Did they die or were they eaten by other insects or birds? What is the correct way to release them in the garden?
That's a great question and comment. So for the whole group, when you release them, they are typically not going to stay around. If you read literature, it will often say they don't stick around if there's not food. And I know that with this example, there were still aphids. Unfortunately, they don't set up shop. They're very mobile and they like fresh areas for food. So to answer you, they are going to fly away. Unfortunately, that's always going to happen. And one of the challenges with using ladybugs is a good organic biological control is that you do need a lot of them. And it's not because they don't eat enough, it's because they don't hang around. So what's recommended is if you do want to release and you want to try to see some type of benefit, they recommend doing it more than once and spacing it out. So typically, I can get 3 releases with 1 container. You put it in the refrigerator between, and it slows their blood down. So they're, I don't know the right way to say it. They don't expire. So that's something else you can do, and then you'd follow up maybe later in the summer if they're still in stock with another one of those containers. So the key is spacing it out.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering, I had a question. Is there any chance of moving disease around by purchasing them and releasing them? Or I don't know if
That's a
that's an
great
issue or.
question, Christy. I have not seen any evidence of that or really that being talked too much about. What I do see though is disease and parasites being introduced from the non-native species. That seems to be the biggest concern.
Okay. All right, great. Chris mentioned that the mantids that are available for sale are often invasive. They're
That is absolutely true. So
non-native species.
unfortunately, you really have to be careful. And I'll raise my hand and say I did it. It was maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago. There were 2 seasons that I released, and in fact, one of them was near my office in downtown Manhattan. And a couple years went by, and I realized, oh my gosh, these are not native, and sometimes that can be okay. But the non-native, like the ladybugs, the mantis, actually will bully and eat the natives. So
Mm.
I guess you just have to really research and know what you're doing. But
I,
I've done
I've
it.
I've done everything you're not supposed to do at some point during my long gardening career, so we're all learning all the time.
Yes. Let's
We're
see.
trying.
Judy asks, is it best to purchase lady beetles from a local source so they are regionally adapted? Or is it even possible to purchase them from a local source? That would be maybe another question.
Great question. Yes, you can do both. Um, I think sometimes, depending where you live, it could be challenging to find them locally. But if you can, I 100% would agree that they are going to be localized and kind of more ready for your condition. If you can't find them though, go to, I think it's Amazon, some other places like Big Box online. Just the key is making sure they're a native species, but you typically can find them online if you can't find them local.
Okay. Peggy just remarked that 50 aphids per day doesn't seem like much for them to eat. Her woodland sunflowers have hundreds on one stem. So I guess you need a lot of them.
Yeah.
Camille loves lady beetles and wishes the ones in her house weren't invasive. She wants to hang out with them. Let's see. Do you know, Adrian asked, would you know when the Asian lady beetle was introduced to North America?
It was late 60s, early 70s. So it was about 10 years after the native from Europe came over.
Okay, great. And Mandy asked, what predators eat ladybugs?
Things like their number one is going to be frogs. After frogs, it's going to be wasps. Those are the 2
Oh,
biggies.
frogs and wasps. Okay. Ruth asked, do you wait for rain to release the ladybugs and then they seek water? I'm wondering if chlorinated water from the garden hose is not great for them.
That's a great point. I didn't even think
is.
about that. Really good point. I would say if you can wait after rain, that'd be ideal. The package is going to say when you release to water the area, but if you can wait for the rain, I think that's an excellent way to go. I'm going to make a note of that moving forward.
Mhm. Yeah, great idea. Okay. I think that's all the questions. It's all in the chat box unless somebody has something else. Oh, Trix asked, do you recommend killing the invasives?
I do, but I'm careful about saying how you do it, as long as it's not spray and it's going to have that negative impact on other things or your own health. If you can find creative ways to do that, yes, yeah.
Okay. And then Chris put in a useful tip. If you let tap water sit overnight, the chlorine gas is out, so you wouldn't have to worry about it as much. Great tip, Chris. Okay. Well, thanks again, Collins.